Good morning, everybody, here in the room and also on Zoom. I'm very happy to welcome you all for this exciting conference, which is quite a while in the making, exactly almost 5 years. So it took a long time and a lot of problems to surpass, to bring everybody together. My name is Wolf Gruner. I'm the founding director of the Center for Advanced Genocide Research here at the University of Southern California. Our center is 8 years old now, and we have a lively academic program which consists of hosting fellowships for junior and senior scholars. We have an event speaker series, and we usually organize one conference per year, not always as big as this one. So I'm really happy to welcome you all. I have to say, since it took such a long time to kind of, in the end, make this happen, we have also to admit that some goals we had in the very beginning, which was to bring together scholars, indigenous scholars from the Americas, the Pacific, and also Australia and New Zealand, was kind of getting more difficult than we anticipated in the beginning. And so there, you might notice in the program that there is a slight imbalance towards the North America, if I'm being diplomatic. But this was not what we actually hoped for. We wanted to really bring people from these different communities in these different geographies together, which was problematic because of COVID. We had some people who had to withdraw. There were also some panels which we hoped to be organized from Australia, which didn't come through. But in the end, we are very happy that we have representatives of over 30 indigenous communities at this conference, which I think it's a really great foundation for a conversation. And we also perceive this as a beginning of a conversation. So this is supposed to be really a start. We want to bring people together and beyond the conference to create a kind of connections between all of you. We have this goal that this conference is not only to represent, let's say, research, but it's really to educate people. As the student from the Native American Student Assembly yesterday said, it is about really to disseminate knowledge also to those who are non-indigenous. And I think that's a really important part of the conference too. And that this is actually possible, I can convey that because my personal experience is like this. I grew up in communist Germany, so I'm German of origin. And in communist Germany, the doctrine was everybody is equal. And East Germany was very anti-United States. And one of the results of being so anti-United States was that I was brought up as a child with pro-Native American children's books, movies. And so the good guys were always the American Indians and not the cowboys and not the settlers. So that's a very different kind of foundation in my childhood. So I don't know if this, in the end, led to the idea to do this conference. I don't think so, because actually I have to give tribute to a young 19-year-old sociology student in the University of Minnesota, which I met at a conference on Holocaust and Genocide Studies, where I, together with some Canadian colleagues, pushed forwards to do more research on Native American history. And she came up to me and was crying, and I said, "Why are you crying?" And she said that she grew up in a nearby reservation, and that how much still the violence kind of is traumatic for her community. And in this moment, I think it was clear to me that I have to do this conference. And I think this was the very beginning, and then I brought in Lorena and Dorota and Irma to be co-organizers for the conference, which I'm very thankful for. We had, although it was a long run, we had a really good working relationship. And I'm also happy that we have a large group of co-sponsors. Some dropped out, but we could attract others, so you have them in the program. They helped to bring everybody together here, so I thank them really dear from my heart. And I think what we really want to achieve is to have conversations and discussions about these difficult topics in the past, but also those who reach kind of into the present. So again, I welcome you from the hosting institution, the Center for Advanced Genocide Research, and also on behalf of the University of Southern California. And I'm handing over to my co-organizer, Lorena.
Good morning, everybody. Bonjour. I'm Lorena Fontaine. I'm from Canada. I'm Anishinaabe and Cree. Some of you that were here last night heard me moderate the panel, the elders panel in the evening, which was quite amazing. I was very, I felt very privileged to be sitting with such amazing women elders. I'm a member of the Wolf Clan, and my spirit name is Wolf Sky Woman. Both my parents, as well as my grandparents, are residential school survivors. So I inherited that, the legacy from those schools. And I didn't know that I inherited the legacy. I didn't know that my parents or my grandparents had attended these schools or what they were for until the mid-1990s. So when I was listening to the students last night from the American Indian Studies Association, they were asking very important questions about who am I? Where do I find my cultural knowledge? Where do I find out about my identity? And I know in my generation, we have been so actively advocating for Indigenous land rights, because that is the first thing that the settler population wanted to extinguish was our land base. And our land base is integral to our identity. The land is everything to Indigenous peoples. And our knowledge about who we are as Indigenous peoples comes from our relationship to the land. And countries around the world have taken, they've taken our land base. But one of the most difficult things that we're dealing with now is being able to answer to younger people about who they are. And those are important questions. I was privileged to be in a class with the late Vine Delorier, who's from Standing Rock, and also an Indigenous rights activist. He has passed away. But I remember something that he told us that has always stuck with me. He said that our people, who we are, is the land, our language, and our culture. They have taken our land base, and now they're attacking our identity, our culture, and our language. Once they do that, who are we after? How do we define ourselves distinctively in our communities? How do we tell the non-Indigenous population that we are Indigenous peoples if we don't have a land base, we don't have a language, and we don't have our culture? So these kinds of conferences are so important because we need the academic community, we need our elders, we need our youth, we need scholars to be doing research in these areas, to ensure that our rights are recognized, to ensure that our land base is returned in any way that we can achieve that. And we are also in a period where we have a younger generation that is looking for their identity. So we need our knowledge keepers. We need pathways to find those knowledge keepers. And this is a very challenging road that I think each of us here in our careers, in our family life, in our community life, are trying to assist in answering these questions and advancing our rights. So I'm really grateful that all of you have traveled here, because I know travel is still very risky. I am so overwhelmed by the number of people here that I've read your books, your scholarship. I've listened to you on YouTube. I've even the elders that are here. One of them said that she doesn't write, right? But she does speak, and I've listened to some of her talks on the internet. So I'm also grateful for Dorota and Wolf for supporting this conference, because I think they understand the importance of coming together from different communities to support each other, not only in our scholarship, but to advance our rights, our painful journeys, the violence that we have experienced in our own respected communities, that we're not alone in our struggles. And I think that's all I wanted to share with you this morning, but just want to say Chimigwech. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for traveling, and I'm looking so forward to hearing what you have to share at the conference. Thank you.
Hello, and thank you to the Center for Advanced Genocide Research for making it possible for me to be here. I would really like to thank my co-organizers, Wolf, Lorena, and Martha. It's extraordinary, and I want to give a special shout out to Martha. I think you would agree that were it not for Martha's heroic efforts, I don't think we'd be here. So thank you, Martha. And I am really privileged to be here on the ancestral and unceded territory of the Tongva and Kizh Nations and the neighbors. And I'm really grateful to the elders who shared the difficult knowledge and very difficult lessons with us yesterday. And I'd just like to say why I'm here. As I said yesterday, I come from Nova Scotia, Halifax, which to the Mi'kmaq, who have lived there for at least 10,000 years, has been known as Chiboktok, which in the Mi'kmaq language means great water. And I'm an immigrant to Canada. You may be able to tell it by my lovely accent. And as such, I came from Poland, Eastern Europe. As such, I could argue that my ancestors, did not take part in mass atrocities against Indigenous peoples in the Americas. But I work at the university in Chiboktok. They pay me, I benefit from being on that land, which has prospered because it's sitting on stolen land and because it has been made rich by, stealing the resources. So as such, I feel like I'm also implicated in these histories, and that obligates me. My academic background is in continental philosophy, but then I rebranded as a Holocaust scholar and increasingly comparative genocide scholar. But the Holocaust is also my family history. I'm a daughter of a Holocaust survivor. My grandmother on my father's side had 10 siblings, and only herself and one sister survived. So I always think that it's such a miracle for me to be here. I really enjoy it and appreciate it every day. And I was really focused on the history of the Holocaust because, obsessively, you can say, until I met Daniel Paul, and that was around 2008, and I went to a talk he gave at my university, and he started his presentation with a famous quotation from the Holocaust. And then he kept making references to the Holocaust and making me realize the connections between these two histories. And for instance, up until then, I didn't know that Christopher Columbus's fated voyage in 1492 was funded, at least partly, by the property expropriated from Jews who were expelled from Spain in the same year. So 1492 was a disastrous year for both Jews and indigenous peoples of the Americas. So the history of my community and the histories of indigenous communities are very different, but then they also intersect and they converge at the times when both of our communities were, target of genocidal violence. But there is a difference. Like, the difference is that the Holocaust is very well known, including in many movies that have been made about it. But the histories that the elders told us about yesterday, the history of the genocide here in California, this still needs to be written about, and movies need to be made, and it needs to be recognized, and it hasn't been yet. It has to be commemorated. The harms and cultural loss still have to be acknowledged and restituted. So there is a difference, between how these two histories have been recognized. So again, as an educator, I think I'm obligated to do that. So within the framework of this conference, I'm also thinking about the recognition of mass atrocities against indigenous peoples within the official definition of the genocide that was signed in 1948. A long time ago in Europe, the most kind of powerful voices were, the voices of world empires who were, imperialist empires. And under that official definition of the genocide, which referred to acts of aggression carried out with an intention to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group, that did not really encompass settler colonial genocides that spanned over more than 500 years, that included atrocities that were carried out under the veneer of civilizational good, of which boarding schools in the States and residential schools in Canada are the main example. So in Canada, we often say how we need to decolonize in response to the calls to action from Truth and Reconciliation Commission, but I'm thinking that the very definition of genocide perhaps also needs to be decolonized so that a much wider range of mass atrocities can be rightfully recognized. And so again, as the scholar of the Holocaust and as a daughter of a Holocaust survivor, I feel that I have an obligation to support my indigenous colleagues' demands for historical justice, because I know that that justice has been granted to members of my community and the members of my family who were, targeted by the genocide. And I also think, I actually know that Holocaust scholars like myself have a lot to learn. We can learn a lot from indigenous scholars. We can actually learn about the Holocaust by having these conversations. So I'm here to listen and to learn from you. And then my duty is also to take it back to Halifax and share it with my students. So these are the reasons why I am really delighted to be here, and thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm back. I forgot to mention one thing. Somebody yesterday asked a very important question about trauma-informed. We are covering some very challenging topics that can be triggering, right? So we want to make sure that we are able to look after anybody who is triggered. When I was asked last night, I didn't jump. I wasn't thinking, but I have that training. I work with students at the university because I teach triggering topics. I also worked with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission to help anybody that was triggered during the commission. So if you see anybody or you are that person, please feel free to connect with me. We have a beautiful outdoor space where we can sit by the tree and listen to the water and talk if you need to. But I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows that I am here if you need any kind of debriefing from some of the topics we're going to be covering. So, miigwech. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you to my co-organizers for their personal reflections here. Dorota stole a little bit my thunder because I actually wanted to use this opportunity here to thank Marta and Maya and also the student workers who worked to prepare everything right. So there's another kind of shout out to those who make this actually possible. And also our audio, video kind of personnel who does really a great job. Hopefully everything will go smoothly. There will be catastrophes, but rather small, hopefully.